I'm Ida. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. I am from IFC, International Finance Corporations, based in Jakarta. I am the regional lead for our East Asia Green Building Market Transformations. But actually with me, I have my colleague, Michelle Farrell, who flew from Washington. So maybe, Michelle, if you could also kind of be together on the stage, right? And I promise we won't take so much time. I understand that you will have networking and other kind of sessions after this, right? But very quickly, I think just kind of building on the previous sessions where we have the designers, the architect talking about design in hospitality, right? So what are we doing at IFC on this space, right, Michelle? Right, so first of all, maybe IFC, it's International Finance Corporations. It is the private sector arms of the World Bank Group. So our activities mainly actually invest, we're the investors in private sectors. If the World Bank that you know, they invest with governments and all that. IFC, we invest in the private sectors. Maybe if you could put it forward, please. And we do a lot in tourism, actually. Some data, right. Right, so this is IFC invests so many projects, right, in tourism, retail, and property. You can see that in the tourism itself, we've invested in over 335 projects in 95 countries, including in Indonesia and in East Asia. So we've done a lot on this space. And as we invest, as part of the World Bank Group, we have development mandates, right? So we're also being asked that we don't just invest in terms of like businesses and get the hotels constructed and all that, right? But we also have missions on like development, environment, gender, and more now on the climate change, climate positive activities. That's where we come in at this stage, right? So in helping buildings, hotels, retails, other properties, office, education facilities, health facilities, and whatnot, so that they are more sustainable in many ways, right? And more now, IFC, when we invest, it has to be aligned with the climate change agenda. Otherwise, we cannot invest anymore, right? So this is the investment in tourism because we, of course, it's bottom line is good, right? But we also want to create jobs, economic growth, developing local supply chains, and all of these very good, positive areas on the local economies, regional as well as globals, right? So here we see that buildings designs that is sustainable when we invest in hospitality is key. So on that, IFC has embarked on these green buildings, and we do have a kind of a solutions on that. So we don't just kind of ask people to have a sustainable project, but we also have built our kind of alternative solutions, if you like. Next one, please. Right. So this is going deeper into the 335 hotel projects. Here cover all different regions, and then we do business hotel, budget chains, resort, ecologists, mixed use, service apartments, different kind of types. And then in terms of like brands, here are some names. But we also do domestic regional hotel chains. So I understand that the audience are probably from the design team. So if you kind of discuss with your maybe your clients, well, think about us also because we can offer investment financing as well as what we call advisory services.
And I would just add one thing. So as an architect, right, in the past I would have said you don't need certification, right? But what is happening today is how are we going to finance the transition from brown buildings to green buildings? Banks cannot judge whether a building is green or not just, I mean, if we say in biophilic design, for example, there's not a way to say if that's ranked green or not. So to be included in something like a green bond or eligible for green financing proceeds, you do have to have that certification. So that is why IFC developed this type of system. So we just recently had a transaction with Ascot. They did a sustainable linked loan where 7 of their hotels were renovated as part of this program. So as the hotels get greener, the performance improves. They obtain certification, not for the reason of the label, but for the reason of the finance transaction. Then they're able to get a reduction on their interest rate on that financing. So it becomes now a powerful mechanism. Also, hotel owners, should they want to bundle these properties and launch a REIT or a green bond, gives them so much more flexibility in terms of how they manage their assets. They want to renovate later. They have control of that. So there's, beyond kind of the architecture thing, it's also the proof that you comply to be eligible for the green bond standards or green proceeds. There's also the fact of attracting multinational finance as well. In a lot of emerging markets, they're looking for different types of finance from abroad, even from development banks, such as IFC or ADB or these others. They're also using this as a mechanism.
Right, so it's really to unlock climate finance, as Michelle said. And for example, in Indonesia, I think from the banking authority, there is more and more push for the banks to have a green portfolio, right? And green buildings, we see that it's kind of one of the ways that people can actually be on that space, right?
So this is what we have. In IFC, we've developed these tools. There's actually a group of us, a lot of architects, which is kind of lost architects at a bank. But we have put together this type of system, and all the concept here is about keeping costs extremely low. We don't want this system to cost you a lot. We want it to be measurable and quantifiable. So that means with EDGE, we have GHG emissions can be tracked, embodied carbon. With Building Resilience Index, you're going to look at your exposure to natural hazards and also localized hazards. So was your building built before new fire codes were put in, for example, something like that. And then APEX, which looks at city decarbonization. So if you were in a city and you asked a city manager, am I going to invest in electric buses or am I going to invest in a bike lane? Can you quantify the difference in carbon emissions that you will save? These are the type of tools. So we're trying to give these tools to the market to use as a tool as they design, right? And a lot of hotels are actually committing to use EDGE. Gensler this year, just at COP28 when I was there, they committed that they will train all their offices in EDGE now. So EDGE is going to be across Gensler. We also just recently, Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, if you're familiar with them, they use EDGE throughout their net positive pathways. And we're going to be announcing at the next conference that there is also the Better Hospitality Initiative. So Global Compact has also picked up the fact that having both the operational efficiency but the ability to leverage finance are two very important things. And Gensler also sees that. People are looking for bankable projects. I mean, it's something that's important. We want things to be climate finance ready so that people can take advantage of the benefits that come with that.
Right, so this is EDGE. I think somebody mentioned it already. Thank you for that. This is actually in public domain already. It's not like others. Again, this is IFC who develops it as part of the World Bank Group. So EDGE is something that we create and we maintain. We update it continuously. We're behind it. So that it's in public domain in the sense that everybody can use it because we really want to democratize, this, right? You don't need to kind of certify it if you're not, if there is no business case for that. I think I very much agree with the previous panelists that it boils down to business, right? If you do have a good reasons to certify it, then you do. Like, for example, accessing climate finance because like to have sustainability linked loan or bond, then you may want to have prove it, right? But if not, then EDGE is there. You can just go to edgebuildings.com. It's there. It's open. You can use it. You can play around with the software. It's web-based software, right? And see if how do you fare? How is your design fares in comparisons to other hotels in the regions, right? Or in your locations. And then if you have the needs, right, business case-wise and maybe other visions or, missions that goes with your companies, then by all means go and certify it, right? And we have partners for certifying. So it's not, we can't certify our own, tools, right? So we work with partners. Different country may have different partners, but global partners, we also have partners, right?
Yep, exactly. And I think all of this, the 20%, that's kind of where all of this started. But now in some of the more advanced markets, we're seeing different levels of incentives for different levels of savings. So that means if you are doing this in, if you're working in a certain area with a bank in Colombia, they're going to ask for 40%, and you're going to get a bigger discount rate. So you can actually optimize the building within Edge to, if you do really passive design, I mean, this isn't going to be with all of the most fancy equipment, but you can keep it very low. I mean, we are doing affordable housing that can be about 3% extra per additional cost, really focusing on those, focusing on the passive design first, focusing on those measures that we can take that are not depending on so much air conditioning and taking advantage of what's natural. The other thing that's great about this is you have a baseline automatically built into this tool. So you're not like LEED having to build that baseline. You have a tool here that you can automatically use to consider it. And even if you don't certify, use this as a tool. I mean, there's Aga Khan, for example, across their portfolio, uses this as a tool just to design. And this is how it looks. You're going to have, just let us know when we have a minute. I forgot to look at the time. But when you have here, what you see on the left is your baseline building. It's going to break it down into the sections where your energy is spent. So then you would automatically know, okay, I'm spending a lot of my energy in cooling, so where am I going to head for my design elements? Looking at shading, looking at those key things, finding out what is the best answer, and then seeing what you've reduced. So across the board, you are looking at a minimum of 20% energy savings, and that is compared against a business-as-usual baseline. So that means if you're in Kazakhstan, it's going to be against a typical building there. If you're here, it'll be against a typical building here. Then the 20% of water efficiency and 20% of embodied carbon. And that's very important because if you're going to be quantifying your Scope 1 and Scope 2 and 3 emissions, and also ESG. ESG is a huge reason for certification. If you look through some of the reports, Capital Land, ASCOT, it's very much quantifying what they've done. It's kind of proof of concept before maybe investors who are looking at risk. And these are the different levels. We go to zero carbon. We have a great zero carbon building here. We have some of the people from Asia Green Real Estate in the audience. They did an amazing residence here, and we really are proud of that one. And they're taking this and using it with both of those kind of aspects in mind, both the financing, but also kind of being progressive with their operations. And it's for basically every type of building, except for super heavy manufacturing. But even we are kind of picking up in the hotel industry so much, we haven't really pushed on this. It's been more of this pull from Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, from these big brands that are starting to see how it works and how it's quite efficient and affordable. The other thing here, I think, is this is going to be quite important because when you apply for finance, this design period, when you have your construction drawings, that's where you want to get a preliminary certificate. So that gives you the chance to go to the bank with the preliminary certificate and say, per this design, per my energy savings, what rate will you give me? They will tell you, yes, that's agreed. So now you can expect what's going to happen during your construction period. Once you confirm that it is actually performing as it should be, you get your EDGE certificate, and the bank will close on that rate, and you're able to prove it. And again, it's because banks are going through the struggle right now where they've got all this climate finance, they've got this, and they need to have some mechanism to measure it. And that's really, I think until codes are all the way up there, these type of certifications will work. And we also fund BREEAM, LEED, and all these other types of projects. This is just one of the alternatives. And these are just the example. GBCI is one of our certifiers. You guys know them from LEED. And yes, this is also very important with GRI and GRESB. We have a partnership. Well, not partnership. We have an alignment with GRESB. We've done quite a few kind of events with them. But using us in all of those reports is quite common. And then also we have an alignment document with the SDGs, if you're doing anything on that end. And this is just talking about the certifiers. I mean, if you're doing multiple properties, you can actually bring it down to hundreds of dollars a property. That would be if you're doing residences. If you're doing a large hotel, around 10,000. And we don't have a fee for the software. That's going to cut a lot of that out, right? I mean, this is what we wanted to try to do with this product. And this is where we are. And you don't see our US one, but we do have one on 5th Avenue now, so yeah, it is now there. And we are just kind of growing exponentially. I mean, we have a ton in even Sweden now.
In Indonesia, we have about close to 150 projects so far. Yeah, and more in the regions.
Mm-hmm. So we'll look at this list, not as bioclimatic as the previous session, but basically we have all of the information loaded into the tool, so you can start immediately. That was one of our benefits as World Bank Group. We have a lot of that data, so we're able to build that up, where that can be a challenge to get some of that data in other types of tools. We also have a cost calculator. This is really important because every time you make a design change, so if I paint the roof white versus putting in shading versus better glass, I can weigh the energy reduction, which will then be transformed into the utility cost reduction, so I can see that. But if I want to compare that against something else, it's very easy. I just click these buttons and turn them on and off, and I can see, okay, this option saved this, and it took a 3-year payback period. This option took 5-year payback period, but actually achieved more. So I'm able to really balance them during the design process. So you're not having to do this crazy extra stuff. You're making really, if you make the smart design decisions early, you're going to do okay in this.
And it's in the local currency as well. So if you use it for your projects in Indonesia, then it gives the value in rupiah. And in Vietnam, and it's in Vietnamese dong. And then, as I said, we constantly update it, maintain it, meaning that behind the scene, we do cost kind of study all the time, so that if technology has reached Indonesia, for example, then we update it. Not just the cost, but also the availability of the technology.
Yeah, exactly. And these are just some of the hotels. This one, I mean, big thing we're seeing in Latin America is actually the retrofit of hotels. Incredibly fast payback period. If you have inefficient systems and you go to things like controls on doors and controls on air conditioning. So that is also, when you do the math, quite low-hanging fruit as well when you have a whole portfolio. So yeah, I'll just click through some of these quickly. This is one we have in Phuket. Hopefully they will be on the next panel with us. And yeah, just some other ones. Lion Green Park Statistics. Another Tribe Bangkok.
Thailand, right?
Yep, more in Thailand. Vietnam, we have quite a few as well. But really, you see all of these vary a lot, right? They're not, all of these are by different designers, all of them are different styles. But smartly designed, efficient equipment, not having a big glass facade in the middle of a desert is always a good step in the right direction. And this is EcoLoft, which is for Asia Green Real Estate.
This is the first, in Indonesia, the first zero carbon building that we have with Edge. We're very proud of it, and we have Asia Green Real Estate colleagues here. So what they did is actually energy saving. You see, it's 82%. So a lot of things, when they design it very much in mind already to achieve this performance, energy saving, water saving, as well as material saving. What happened with Edge is that if you are able to reach at least 40% energy saving, then right now we're saying that we can, you can do offsets, and then as long as you offset that, then you'll get EDGE, a zero carbon certificate. But doesn't mean that if you have money, then you get that. We really push for people to reduce, and this is what happens with the Ecole of Jababeka. This is a service apartment, right? That's why energy saving is a high 82%, and then the remaining 18% is the one that is being offsetted right now.
Yeah, this is another one. You know more about the BIMland one than I do. This was their sustainable linked bond that was launched. And again, hospitality assets, just a really big area. One of the big reasons we got into this area was COVID, and a lot of hotels needed help during that time, right? So there was kind of that transition through that period. There was funding to help them get through. But a lot of those hotels also use that to renovate. So they were able to use the downtime to actually upgrade their facilities and work and bring their portfolios to a better standard. These are just the labels. Did you get on the building? You're very excited about those? Yeah, and we're funded by the UK government. That's why it's free. So it's not that we're, UK government wants people to use it. They mandate we report square meters per year that we have certified, and that's kind of what they're looking for. They want more green buildings, and this is what we're doing with EDGE. And we're hoping that we'll go try it out. edgebuildings.com, Apex Cities, and then Resilience Index or Building Resilience Index? I think it's resilienceindex.com. But yeah, we'll send that out after this. Okay, thank you. Oh, do you have any questions? Yeah.
Yes. Okay, back to back.
Back to back. Now I tag back.
All right. Yeah, let's see. You want that plaque, don't you?
So I have a beautiful project in Phuket, which you know. Mm-hmm. We have a couple of buildings, residential buildings and hotel building. And the client want everything EDGE certified and want one building carbon zero. Okay. Do you recommend it for a hotel or for a residential building? So the carbon zero,
the same owners?
Yeah, the same owners, same project, same location, everything. So we have a couple of buildings. A few are hotel and a few are residential buildings. Right. And the client wants the first carbon zero building in Phuket. And they're still doubting if they want to do a hotel or a residential building. What would be the best option for us?
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'll try and then I'll do mine. Yeah. So I think because for zero carbon, there's another requirement from EDGE, which is the operationals. So we need data on electricity consumptions, right? And also at least 75% occupations. That's just kind of, because it's just zero carbon, it has to meet that, right? So I think given that, and this is saying that residentials and hotels, they both already achieve 40% minimum, right? So there's no kind of incremental costs in that kind of direction, right? So assuming that, then I think given the data that we need, residential probably, kind of intuitively, right? It's used daily on a daily basis. I would assume that it's, you may have fluctuations if it's hotels, but residentials, assuming people stay there, right? So I think that's really also more beneficial in terms of the actual delta that we want to get for the planet, right? From that kind of perspective.
I would also, is this working? So I would also, however, though, look at the other case of this, right? Booking.com, now we've got little leafs next to it. All the hotels are calling us, they're rated. We are having, is this hotel going to be included in the ESG report in the future? So those sort of things, I would say that property is perhaps more at risk of needing that in the future than the residents. I also think you're going to get a differentiation of more tourists. There's a lot more kind of brand equity in saying I'm going to stay at a sustainable hotel than I'm going to commit to buying a mortgage for a green property. Maybe someone's going to pay much more for one night or a week at a hotel that's green than paying for their, a house. They're not willing to commit to that, but they're willing to take their sustainability to that level with doing it in a commercial property. Also, so many selling points. I mean, this is something people are really marketing this now. I mean, we didn't really predict this, but it's become a big reason why they're doing this, and it's getting a lot of press. The traction that they're doing is getting bringing a lot of people. A lot of corporate multinationals are then booking and requiring green hotels because that's part of their reduction strategy, their ESG plan. They're going to put their people in green hotels. So as more of the multinationals move that way, I think the hotel could probably leverage the brand a bit more. The residents will be easier. So you decide.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm an architect, and just asking the question for developers aspiring to follow this, to apply for the Edge. And are there consultants that are working with clients to lead them through the whole design process from A to Z? And then the second question is, which banks in Indonesia are actually working together with you or under you to distribute the funding? Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle can add. On the first question, yes, there is. So Edge, we have people called Edge experts. These are people available to support you in that process. In fact, we have one in the room right now, sitting at the back. So yeah, there are people that's been trained and then when taking the exams, accredited as Edge experts. And we also have Edge auditors, independent people who help maintaining the quality of the certifications. Right? And we'll be happy to put you in touch with this list of people, right? Either in the country or in the region or globally. There are many people. How many? I don't know how many Edge experts we have globally. Right.
There's probably 150 in Indonesia, I think.
Exactly. Yes. And on the second questions, which is the banks, right? The banks, right? So actually, I mentioned about IFC being finance investment arm of the World Bank Group. So so far, we invested in 2 banks, local banks. I mean, local but international link, right? OCBC and ISB, and also BTPN. So we invested in those banks with an understanding that portions of the financings is to be distributed as green credits, green loans, green mortgage, whatever. It's really within their purview to distributions. But we want to work with more, actually. It's just so far.
Yeah, and I think what we've heard, at least in terms of accessing that finance, the structure is here. The infrastructure in terms of the legal framework, now it's rolling out. We're stepping towards it becoming more and more popular. And then in terms of saying an architect, right? You're an architect, you could use that. I'm sure you would use that early in the design process. You may not even need an expert. I'm sure you've been designing green buildings. If you were just a client, then I would perhaps say get an expert. But if you're an architect, you can easily roll that into your design services.
So would you advise the client to go to a consultant first, that is an expert on Edge, or would they go direct to the bank?
I would actually call the bank. But what's going to happen is the bank has the loan, right? And sometimes there's confusion in this process. So they have the green bond. What will have to happen is they can use it on eligible proceeds. Green buildings that comply with ICMA and all of this are eligible use of proceeds. They just have to make sure they find the right person on the phone that knows about this, knows about the program, may not be heavily advertised. But yes, I would get in touch with the bank. I'd go to the bank and try to have that conversation. Also, HSBC, Standard Chartered, they're doing things throughout the region now. I mean, these people they have committed to making their banking portfolios much more green, and they're searching for projects to invest in. So if you have a good bankable project, don't just think within the country, think outside as well.
Thank you, Pam. Great question.
I think we have one more question before. No? Do you?
Yeah. Hello, just quick. I'm Rani from ITDC, so Indonesia Tourism Development Corporation. We're actually state-owned enterprise that actually develops and manage tourism destinations sustainable tourism destinations such as the Nusa Dua, which is already 50 years old, and then the Mandalika in Lombok. So we have 1,175 hectares of state-owned land that we developed and also rent to investors to basically invest in related to tourism. Now, the other new destinations is actually the Golomori. It's 20 hectare within the 300 hectare Tanamori in Labuan Bajo. So yeah, and our MICE was used for ASEAN Summit last year. So anyhow, I mean, it is very interesting what you have presented. And if I may ask you, or maybe just an example, where would your great initiative could be placed well or offered well relates in tourism destinations, especially as big as the Mandalika, for example, it's almost 1,200 hectares. So if maybe you could advise us, just a brainstorm, you know, how, because I was trying to tap in and map out so thank you very much.
So I would say the opportunity there, right, you have a few opportunities, and we're thinking of impact and lasting change. As a government, you have the ability to push the envelope a little bit further and be an example to the market that green buildings are viable. So that's very, very important role that we think governments play. And we think really they should certify because it shows that. Your role in this could be, as you control this land, to require that within the zone of this land, that you require either a green building certification or proof that the building is 20% energy efficient against a business as usual baseline. So I would put in a code for that development and make all the people comply with that get on the property. And that would also, it'll reduce your costs as well for infrastructure, for water. You know, you're not going to have to provide as large infrastructure if you have this site that's going to consume a lot less. In some places that are dealing with power outages all the time, all of these issues, the consuming less puts a lot less stress on the grid too. So we're really making, you know, we want these smart choices as people evolve with their properties. You know, make the foundation green from the beginning.
So just a little bit more. So basically looking, zooming out in the future, because once we completed the 1,175 hectare fully, we would have approximately around 10 to 20, could be even 20,000 hotel rooms. And not to mention, there is also other amenities and attractions and everything with the destination. So would that mean, as you said, that we would advise to our investors or hotel owners that rent our land to, basically could use EDGE in order to get the green financings?
Exactly.
And your banks would be, that means private banks, right? You don't have a state-owned banks that works together with you, like in Mandiri or BNI or BRI or?
EDGE can be used for state-owned bank, private banks. It's just the two that I mentioned, because IFC's mandate is to invest in private sector, hence the private banks, right? But the tool itself, EDGE, you can use it for whichever banks.
So if that public bank launched green finance and it was aligned with your international standards, then EDGE would be applicable for that. But World Bank would be the guys working with those banks versus us. But they have the same structure, it's the same foundations, the principles that bonds are set on. And one thing I would say is, don't suggest mandate, you know, because this is the type of steps we need. This is what's going to move things forward, right? And you'll prove that it actually can be done and be viable.
And just to add that, from the EDGE team, we've done a lot of trainings, workshops for be it private businesses, companies, public sectors as well. Let us know, and then we'll give that so that at least your team, your design team, maybe also finance team, management team, knows that it exists and how to use it. As I said again, if you don't have the need for certification at the first stage, that's fine. But you can use it to unlock climate finance, right? And also it has the climate calculator, the metric ton save and all that, right? Which will I think I would imagine you would need that, right? So happy to provide trainings, assistance as you need. And that applies for both public as well as private. We've done a lot of these things actually. We've done training for groups, you name it, private sectors, as well as government projects as well.